and like pull it out and see how brown it came out. Welcome back to Privy. Privy is a podcast about bathrooms, recorded from my home bathroom. I'm your host, Hunter Hoover, and I love bathrooms. I'm just going to say, so this recording is coming right off the tail end of pretty great technical difficulties. Did a full computer reset, the dinosaur lives on, and I did get the blue screen of doom with a frowny face. So that's how you know your computer hates you, is when it just puts a frowny face onto the screen on your behalf. So that was fun. But, you know, we're here. If I try to record in mono, it won't go above a certain level. And so I'm working out that fun little feature of my computer now. And so we're going to record this a little different this time. And so if it sounds weird, I apologize, but we're moving forward. A few weeks ago, my family ate at a local establishment here in Albany. First of all, before I get there, my wife and I ate in a local establishment, and I gotta say, I'm not gonna say the name of this Mexican food place. But they tout authentic Mexican food, and I ordered a plate of nachos, and I got tortilla chips with melted cheese that had been melted in a microwave. And I'm just sitting here going like I understand that this is probably what I ordered, but like when you order nachos with cheese, I just expected something more. And maybe that's on me. That might be on me. But it was kind of just all around. I came home and put some nacho flavored cheese powder for like microwave popcorn on my microwave nachos from the authentic Mexican restaurant. And so if that's not some level of white trash, I don't know what is. But about a month or so ago, my family went to a local establishment called the Cascade Grill. Now, I'm not going to say anything about the teen and young adult aged employees who really missed it as far as like hospitality and just being on top of your job. We're going to skip that. Well, actually, it comes back here in a second, but we sat there for 25 minutes, which is fine. They were not busy, but I was like, well, I'm going to use the bathroom. So I go in the bathroom, and it's chock empty. And y'all probably saw this. If you follow the social media, like TikTok stuff for the cast, at Privycast, you saw this, but I went in, and the bathroom was just not clean. And that's fine. Like, bathrooms get dirty. But again, the flock or conglomerate, or like I say, like, I think the technical term for a group of teens up to no good is like a gaggle or an conglomerate. But, you know, they're just not doing anything on the job. And it's like somebody could clean toilets. Like, just go do a bathroom check real quick. But the bathroom was pretty whack. And I'm sitting in there, and this gentleman comes in. Now, and he's an older guy doing his deed, and I'm in the stall. And so I'm like, I'm just going to mess with this guy. And I start to just make fart sounds with my mouth. And I do it the first time. I can hear him standing out the other side of the thing. And I'm like, and I hear, oh, geez, it's coming. And to which I realized that this gentleman thought that the fart came out of him. And so I'm like, oh my gosh, like, you got to be kidding me. And I'm kind of just giggling. And then I decide I'm going to go for it again. And I just, make another sound. And then he gets spooked by the fact that this happened. And then quickly leaves the bathroom and does not wash his hands. 10 out of 10. I spooked some old guy at the Cascade Grill, and it was fun. And then we had our food and ate, and that was, what you do at restaurants. But it's hot out here this Privy summer here in the Willamette Valley in Oregon. At the time of recording, it was 101 high today. I don't do well. I'm what the kids call of a thicker nature. And so, like, when the temperatures exceed, like, 80, I just kind of don't function as well. Like everything just systems are much like my computer at the beginning of this record. They all just go frowny face on you, and it's real great. But one of the things that happens this time of year is it gets dummy hot. And yeah, by the time you hear this, I have already gone to Montana and returned. But we're at the point of this recording. I'm recording a little ahead of time because we're going to make this trip. You know, the heat's going to travel with us, and it's a real disappointment because Montana doesn't have to be as hot as Oregon is right now, but it is going to be while we're there, so we might as well just live with it. You know what I'm saying? But it's hot out here, and the heat does something else. When you've interacted with a good well mildewed yard bin, or maybe just like a leaky garbage in a trash bin on the sidewalk, in the summer heat, those things can build up a real big funk. They get real stinky. And heat has a habit of doing that. And thankfully, we live in a time where we have come up with a lot of systems. Like I've shared on the podcast, this podcast is nothing if it's not a podcast to just be thankful for the bathroom situation that we have in today's age. But we live in a time where we have a lot of systems in place to help deal with our rank. Like we have a lot of waste. We create it both with our butt and with the things we put in our trash. And so there's systems in place to help us remove those waste removal in a way that like gets it away from us so we don't have to endure the stink. And we've talked quite a bit about a lot of those services. And we've talked a lot about those services this summer. Maybe it's the summer of stink here on Privy. There's no way that'll catch on, the summer of stink. But this week on Privy, we're going to look at a specific time in history where things were far less sanitary, and as a result, much more stinky. And if you hear that, you might go, well, yeah, that was like probably 95% of all of history before us was just a little more rank. Like, you know, it's recently come to my awareness that when I go to the gym and I have like gym funk going on, uptown gym funk, nope, I tried for it. The hip kids were not into that one. But when I go to the gym, it smells specifically like chicken and vegetable soup, like heavy onion chicken and vegetable soup, and it's just a disaster. But I picked up some soup for someone, I can't remember who. It's the Cascade Grill. And I was like, dang, that smells exactly like when I go to the gym. Sorry, Cascade Grill, but your food is good. But it did make me think of how I smell when I go to the gym. But this week on Privy, we're going to talk about a moment in history where this was almost out of hand. We're going to talk about the Great Stink. Before we had sewer systems, but after people decided it was not appropriate to just dump or perhaps plop their sewage straight into the street, they began to dump their sewage and privy pots and chamber pots and other things directly into the local river. You know, the good old local river. We have a river here in Albany. Not too many people get up in it. Like, there's some floating that happens, but like, it's fine. But in many parts of the world, as they began to dump partially full chamber pots into the rivers, or if you're really swanky, maybe you had sewage that was piped into your chambers and then would empty itself directly out into the rivers. As time went on, it would run and dump into these rivers. But not only that, even after sewers were constructed in major cities, like, they often just routed the sewer with the end line at the local river. Like, it would just seep out the end, like some sort of weird, like, 1960s and 70s cartoon where all sewers lead to the river. It's kind of like Finding Nemo, I think, in that regard. I think that's a plot point in Finding Nemo. I think at one point they're like, if we can get flushed, it goes to the ocean. Which I believe were in Australia. P. Sherman 42 Wallaby Way, Sydney, Australia. Yeah. And so hopefully Australia's not solely doing that type system. I doubt they are. But there was this idea that like all sewers are just going to empty into the local rivers. It's fine. That water is moving, so surely it will move in such a way to carry the very stinky brown we made downriver and away from our lives and knowledge. But the thing is, it settles, it collects, it builds up in time, and in other cases, the air quotes sewers were just rivers. Like, yeah. Oh, here's the other thing. It has to carry the stinky brown like downriver. And so like, God forbid you're the people that are downriver, because if you have North like Humperdincksville and all the people in North Humperdincksville are just like skeeting it right into the river, and you're downriver from that, you get to enjoy all of the benefits of being downriver of North Humperdincksville. The other thing is that as this waste is dumped and slung into the rivers, willy-nilly and hickledy-pickledy, if you will, it begins to settle and collect and builds up. It rests on the bottom. You know, I've gone on record on the show once before, and once in the future, we've already recorded it, saying that you can add enough water to any solid and it will make it a liquid. But sometimes the sheer volume of solids being added to the liquid is too much for the dwindling amounts of liquid to liquefy the solids. It's science. But as it settles and collects, the sewers again are just brick covers that shield the unsightly brown flow. Like there were some places where they just built a brick covering over the local river and called it a sewer and continued to just dump in it, even though it's just the river that used to be there. But now we can't see it or smell it as much because we put brick on top. Cities back then didn't rely solely on sewers. It was by the mid-1800s, waste management was a two-part rinse it down the drain or dump it in the river or take it to the cesspit or privy pit and dump it in there. So you got two options. You can either skeet it into the river, either directly or indirectly, or you can dump it in a big hole in the ground and contaminate your well water. I'm looking at you, cholera. I bet cholera sucks. It can't be good. Like, I'm pretty confident people passed from it. So, but we're not talking about cesspits today. These sewers that these early sewers were often in bad shape. You know, they're just slinging these sewers together. They're made out of brick. They're made out of stone. In some cases, you know, these the sewers are getting worse. The population amount of people like dumping their brown and like just slinging human crap into these lakes and rivers and streams and sewers, air quotes, sewers, it's increasing. And like also to couple that, we have a full like Springfield Simpsons situation where like with the rise of the Industrial Revolution, the factories began to just dump their noise straight into the river as a way of getting rid of it. Now, you know, we have all sorts of laws and things. Yeah, we have all sorts of laws and things to like keep that from happening nowadays. But at the time, they didn't exist. And so this produced more than just turds and trash and other things. Like this is also like chemical runoff. It was a different world back then. Nowadays, if that happened, companies would be slapped with so many fines it'd put them under. But later, flush toilets are introduced, further adding to the problem of overused sewers. Like, now it's just easy to get rid of it. Like, you don't even have to carry the little thing outside. Like, you have it plumb straight into your house. Granted, you probably had to pour some water down the bowl, but that's fine. Like in a world where you used to just like deuce into like a small pan and have somebody carry it outside for you, the piss boy, if you will. Like having a flush toilet, even if you have to put the water in the bowl to get it to flush, it's a better world. It's just a better world. At the time, with all of this added, we'll call it traffic to the sewers and the sewer lines. There was a lot of overflow and there was a lot of outflow in these situations. And when you're dealing with septic or rank water or any sort of sewage situation, two things you don't want: overflow and outflow. Never, ever. You don't want it. And if you do have it, you want to plan for where and how those things are going to overflow and outflow. More on that here in a couple episodes. Well, in one city, the majority of the overflow and the dumping went into one body of water. London, 1855, the River Thames, I don't know. But the river became something of a, quote, concern to local officials and citizens. Visual logs, not tree logs, but like big Dougie Dookie Brown logs could be seen floating in the river. It's like a freaky weird game of Frogger, but instead of like the fun little lily pads and logs, like it's turds. It'd be a different game for Frogger if some of those logs were just turds and you couldn't jump on them and they were like trick logs. Huh. But they're visually like the River Thames. You could go down and you could see just skeet just floating there. Phew. The optics on this were so bad that scientist Michael Faraday, I believe known for the Faraday cage, did a lot. He did a lot with magnets and electricity. Yeah, he has to be the Faraday cage guy. He decided to test the water. He's like, hey, that stuff looks pretty whack. We should test it and see if it's bad. See if it's committed crimes of pollution unseen to humankind so far. He tested the water. The situation was so bad that one test was just to dip a piece of paper in the river and like pull it out and see how brown it came out. Like that's how bad this river had gotten. Like it's not science, but the stink and everything was so awful that that's where they had to start. They're like, is it even not completely brown? Like, what level of brown is the water? Do you know what I'm saying? His report on his tests of the River Thames was near the bridges, quote, near the bridges, the feculence rolled up in clouds so dense that they were visible at the surface, even in water of this kind. The smell was very bad and common to the whole of the water. It was the same as that which now comes up from the gully holes in the streets. The whole river was for the time an actual sewer. Woof. In response to this and the increasing problem of the River Thames, it took the river itself actually took on a personality in their culture. And the personality was that of being a crappy river. The Thames was known as monster soup. Monster soup. I made a monster soup this week, but publications pretended to draw artwork of the River Thames, and the water is filled with skulls and monsters and other filthy-looking creatures. A character called Dirty Father Thames. Sweet Lord. Could you imagine them in the modern days, year 2022 of our Lord, having a character named Dirty Father Thames? It was a simpler time. I'll tell you what. But this character, Dirty Father Thames, looks like kind of like a homeless Wish.com Santa Claus, because he's this character in their society who like lived under the bridge by the River Thames and came out of the water to like cause everything to smell real bad. One poem written about the Thames, titled Father Thames, says, filthy river, foul from London to the Nore, what art thou but one vast gutter, one tremendous common shore? Father Thames took on a personality. Dirty, don't forget the dirty. Dirty Father Thames took on a personality, and the local government did what they could to fight it. They're like, we got to shut this down. This dude's going to overthrow Santa Claus in popularity over here. Not really. But they decided to fight the actual stink in the river, and they dumped lime and chloride and caloric acid, I think, to help ease the stench. So now they're just dumping chemical in the river to try to make it smell less. People were actually afraid of this great stink because at the time they still had the miasma theory of disease, which essentially says that a disease that a person could contract by inhaling bad air. So the stink of the air in London at the time, they believed it could actually make you sick, and that it was like bad. This river that was rank with the stink of Englishmen's leavings. But finally, everyone's least favorite stinky water contracted a friend, cholera, and it ravished London between 1845 and 1855. Now, while most at the time still believed it to be an air quality control issue, Jon Snow, the scientist, not the White Walker Jon Snow from the Game of Thrones, he poised and posited and was doing research in whether the contaminated water was a problem or if it was in fact the air. Spoiler alert, the water was defo the problem. So, on the scene in London is air that is just kind of perpetually smells like a human diaper, cholera from contaminated drinking water, a continuing system of dumping the culprit of both of these into the local water supply. The river became famous again for being foul. Charles Dickens also wrote to a friend, the thing stank so bad it hurt your head and made you want to skeet your insides. Those are his exact words, skeet your insides. It is stated that the deposits of human crap were up to 6 feet deep in the river at places. 6 feet. That's taller than I am standing. I'm seated now. But if I was standing, the amount of human foul in the River Thames at the time would be taller than I am, in places. Unreal. People would smear lime on the curtains of houses and rooms to try to block the stench out. It's almost like a plague of its own had struck the area. Stench. In the summer of 1858, the weather provided the final straw for this camel's back. June, London, 1858. They had a particular heat wave and dry spell that caused the water level of the Thames to go down, leaving exposed human sludge on the banks and in part of the bed of the river. Couple that with the record high temperatures there at the time, mid-90s in the shade and over 115 in the sun. Preach! I feel that. I felt that today. I was going to take my children to a park today, and I looked at the thing, and it said 99 degrees, and I went, you know what's better than a park right now? Air conditioned. Like, I'm all for kids getting outside and playing, but when it's 100 degrees, like, no, it's just not worth it. Like, somebody done come keel over about that. You know what I'm saying? But this insanely high temperatures in London at the time resulted in what the people of London and later the world would call the Great Stink. It was so bad. Queen Victoria and Prince Albert, famous lovers, canceled a trip to the river because they couldn't bear the polluted air. Like, it was so stinky, they canceled their vacation. The Great Stink was so great, they actually saw a pause in parliamentary meetings. It shut down the government. Again, the remedy was powdered lime and the substance, not the delicious fruit. And they would, at one point, they were pouring 250 tons of powdered lime into the river to shut down the smell. Within weeks of the Great Stink, the government at the time passed a bill saying that dumping of sewage and waste had to happen outside the boundaries of the city. Voila! And to remedy the stink in the city. Now, over time, they went about an infrastructure rehaul to do away with the piles of turds that had become a part of their lives. Now, we're going to talk about this stink and the purpose of stink here in a second. We got to get philosophical with it. But one engineer, Joseph Bazinga, came up with the sewage solution, rerouting the already present sewage lines, to dump outside of the city. It took over 15 years to complete this sewer system rehaul. But the sewage and the waste no longer ending up on the banks of the city solved the problem of the great stink. And more importantly, it showed a marked decrease in cholera cases in the area. Bazalgette is a hero of London, known for how he rerouted turds to save lives. His sewer system, or at least parts of it, is still in operation today and serves a population of over 8 million people. What a rad dude. And I want to note here the purpose of stink is the problem existed prior to the stink. But as is most cases when there is stink, the stink exists to alert you of a danger or a bad thing lurking just out of reach. And so the next time you smell big smell somewhere, it's probably something letting you know that there's something going on somewhere with something, as was the case with the River Thames in 1850s London. This brings us to the end of another episode of Privy. I really appreciate y'all joining us. I hope your summers get cooler and remain non-stinky. As always, we'd love for you to leave us a rating or a review. If you're on Spotify, it's real easy. You just click the little stars. If you're on Apple Podcasts, it's also very easy, but you can also leave us a review there, and we'd love to read some of those during the show. As time goes on, we're going to read them as they come in. The reason that you might hear that and you go, oh boy, here we go, another podcast asking me to leave a rating and review. But the reason that those things happen is because it helps people find the show. Like it actually helps people locate the show and know that it's out there. So when they search for it, it helps them find it. Leave us a rating and review. 5-star options are preferred. We'd love for you to do that. It's much appreciated. And it's just a simple way that you can, as always, send us email suggestions, privycast@gmail.com. We'd love to hear from you. Just say hi. Just say, hey, I listened to the show. I didn't like it when you talked about pooping. And my name's Lil Dougie, 419. Follow us on social media. We're at Privycast. Tread lightly on the TikTok. Remember that. But follow us on social media. See what we got going out there. As always, we want to thank Kevin MacLeod for the use of Barroom Ballet as our intro and outro music. You can find Kevin's music at incompetech.com. And his music is licensed under Creative Commons License Attribution 4.0. Thanks, Kevin. This has been another episode of Privy. Thank you so much for joining us. And now, as always, don't forget to flush.